Representing the 4th Rural District, Mr. Floyd Thomas, representing the Madison High District, Mr. Jeff Seeley, representing the Bowling Green District, Nancy Roselle, representing the Church District, and I'm Wayne Akers, and I represent the Madison District. If you'd like, we're going to start the meeting this evening with invocation. If you would, bow your heads, please. Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for your love and the mercies that you bestow upon us each day. We thank you for the rain that we have, which we know that we need to replenish the wells and the rivers that provide us drinking water, and the farmers need it as well. We pray, Lord, that you'll bless the ones that have, the families of the ones that lost their life recently in Fort Hood, Texas. We pray that you would just comfort them, guide them, and direct them, and protect them. And Lord, we pray that you'll bless this country, protect the citizens of this country. And we pray that you'll bless Caroline County and guide and direct this board as it goes about doing the business of this county. We thank you for all that you do for us as individuals, as a county, as a state, and as a country. It is in your blessed name we pray. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Amendments to the agenda, Mr. Ashcraft?
Mr. Chairman, there are no amendments proposed for the agenda.
Open board comments. Mr. Popowitz.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Thomas.
None, Mr. Chairman, other than to remind us we're going to discuss during closing comments, we're going to discuss the December board meeting date.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Seeley?
No, sir.
Mr. Roselle?
None, Mr. Chairman.
And I have no opening board comments either. Mr. Stunkel? Presentations and reports, and you're the one we have this meeting.
Okay, well, I'll try not to prolong it then. Of course, we do have a number of places that we do have high water on the roads throughout the county, and we anticipate that throughout at least the next 24 hours. We haven't been impacted in Caroline as much as some of the adjoining counties because we don't really have the tidal action, and which is where we've been getting the majority of our problems. So thank goodness for some small favors. I'd like to report that the Carmel Church project is approximately 23% ahead of schedule. I don't know if you all have noticed it in your trips through there, but they've been in and been doing some paving on both sides of 207. Of course, I will add that what they're doing is the easy parts because they're doing the parts that are not being done under traffic. So, but hopefully that they can stay ahead of the schedule and get the project wrapped up well in advance of the fall 2011 mandatory completion day. That's really all I have this evening.
Okay. Board members have any questions of Mr. Stunkel?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
No, I've spoken, Mr. Stunkel.
I just want to thank VDOT for the tree cutting they did down on 721, I guess a month or so ago. Everybody's been real pleased, and hopefully if you have some spare time, the volunteers fire station is actually talking about making a list of what they consider hazardous trees that are dead. They've talked about that. Yeah,
they had contacted me by email, and I had encouraged them to send me the list so we could go out and take a look at them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stunkel. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you all.
Next item is reports from supervisor liaisons. The first is Planning, Economic Development, and Utilities. Mr. Popowitz.
Yes, sir. I want to start off today with economic development. Gary's been working with our technology zone ordinance, that we passed a few months ago, and we have actually picked up some promising business contacts from that. We're real pleased to hear that. About 3, I think it was, Gary, wasn't it? And because Gary's been targeting those works pretty hard now that we have that designation in place. There is a Secretariat movie that's scheduled to be filmed now and possibly released in May of 2010, and possibly a book tie-in with the Meadow is probably with that, so that's kind of neat kind of stuff there. And Lee Smith Forest filed for a 5,000 square foot warehouse expansion, which will mean, of course, some more jobs here in the area and some more investment in Caroline, which is always welcome. On the front of utilities, the fish study is scheduled for completion in January, and then we are also working on our inland water plan, which deals with the wells. Currently operating the Days Inn well, the Econo Lodge well. It's expected to have a permit for 100 gallons per minute, and the BSE well number 2 is anticipated to have a 35 gallon per minute permit for that. And then we're also working on our water supply plan. John started that almost immediately when he got here. And then as of earlier this month, on the 4th, we had 37 water and sewer connections. And as far as planning, we heard Mr. Stumple talk about the new project over at 652 and 207, and staff is currently working with VDOT on the TND, the traditional neighborhood development type stuff, and also with our growth areas on urban development area, which we'll have to do for state requirements. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Popovich.
Yes, sir.
Thomas?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for communications and technology / recreation advisory member, the first thing is, as Captain Mosier will know, we've got to basically upgrade the county's radio system within the next couple of years. It's a federal mandate. Basically, Mr. Roselle and I have talked about that before, and I think we're going to keep just the communications component in the side that I support, but as far as where we go, it's going to be handled by public safety. So I think Mr. Roselle is going to take the lead. We're going to talk about that back and forth, but just to make sure you understand there. With respect to technology, Verizon has announced that they're going to be providing DSL service in Port Royal, which comes right after the MetroCast and made the announcement that they would be providing cable modem service in Port Royal. So it seems that we're starting to see a little bit more. We also, well, at the last VACO meeting last week, I spoke to several supervisors who are pretty much in the same position we are. Among them, Steve Nixon from Culpeper. They use Virginia Broadband. They've got no DSL. The concept that they're using that I like for us is they're using new businesses to help expand. So if a new business comes in, they ask them to expand their current infrastructure. So that may be something we'll need to do as far as we get to the economic development. King George County, which has basically been our model, they've been slowed by legal issues regarding tower access. They didn't do basically what we did when a new tower goes up. We basically have a space on that tower reserved at all times for us. Excuse me, that never happens to me. That was my phone going off, so I'm sorry. They are basically right where we are now, except they've got a plan and they're actually using Virginia Broadband. So their understanding is in the first year they'll be able to cover 70% of the county. So if we can do something similar to that, I think it would be great. But again, getting back to where we are, we've got Verizon now in Port Royal. We've got Comcast talking about the lake community. I spoke to some folks from Lake Landor, I believe it was, who have a petition with several hundred names who are trying to move there. So it's not as if the county can actually force private businesses to expand, but we're doing the best we can to help them do that, and we continue to work with the schools, the library, towards the internet connections that we have and trying to expand those. So I'll have a little bit more probably next month when we meet again, but that's where we are right now.
Okay. Thanks. Bowling Green, Port Royal, and AP Hill, Mr. Seeley.
Yes, sir. We'll start with AP Hill and Military Affairs Council meeting last night. We had General Mathis from the Atlantic Command in the area. You probably saw it in the paper this morning. fabulous job speaking. He did bring a lot of good news from Iraq and Afghanistan that he says it's just a shame it's not being reported. He said the progress made there is absolutely amazing, and he said what other country in the world could could move into a country, stand on their street corners, and then that country allow their children to walk down the street with armed soldiers on their way to school. He said it is something to see that most people will never see on the evening news, but the difference is absolutely tremendous. And he said the one message that if he had to bring out to everybody that he came in contact with was the progress that the American military and the soldiers there have made has been absolutely astounding. And he said nowhere else in the world and no other country in the world could do what's been done there in the amount of time that we've been there. And he said, yeah, there's been setbacks, but not to look back, but to look forward at what really is happening there and the good that's really coming. And I think his message last night was really fabulous. There were about 250 people there to hear it. And again, the Military Affairs Council has been the driving force in getting the military and the commercial industry and others in the region involved and looking forward at the base alignment that we have in the region that's been a huge economic engine, and what that does for a region and how we need to look at that as a country. So I think that was a really positive message last night. I have met with the Bowling Green Town Council last week to talk about various issues that we've had, including one of the rezonings. Town Council is going to make their position known, I think, in a letter. We've also talked about the park situation. I see Stephen Manster here, which is on the agenda later. I've had a few meetings with the mayor of Port Royal on the Fort APL noise situation and the new moving in of the command for EOD, ordinance and demolition, and have talked with Rob Whitman. Those issues are still walking their way through some other avenues. So right now it is something that is being worked at different levels.
Okay. Thank you. Public Safety, Public Works, Mr. Rozelle.
Mr. Chairman, the fire and rescue folks continue to work with other agencies in the county with the swine flu issues and all other departments, and all that seems to be in pretty good shape at this point. We've had several training classes going on within the county, specifically an EMTB class. We've had several community fire prevention classes during the month, which October was Fire Prevention Month. So there's been a lot of exercises throughout the county in that area. And the departments of fire and rescue had responded to 165 fire calls and 345 EMS calls for October, and the average response time was 11 minutes and 17 seconds. And the busiest day of the week seems to be Saturday for October. On the public works side, still work continues to be done at Port Royal Visitor Center with the bids being reviewed by VDOT for the Historic Port Royal. The Old Commissioner's Office, as we see in our board packet, there's been some prices gathered for some of the structural issues with the Old Commissioner's Office. And the All-American City signage has been installed and was installed before the State Fair came. And the cannery has been reopened and is now functioning. And the work at Frog Level Rescue Squad is about halfway done, I would say, at this point. And of course, we got the Victory Park issue on the agenda. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rozelle. As far as finance is concerned, as liaison, we're going tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to have a meeting between me being the liaison, but certainly the group that's put together to talk about finances in the county. We'll be in a better position after tomorrow at the next meeting to talk a little more in depth about the shape of the county. The auditors, which I'm glad to see, They're finishing up their field work in Caroline the week of the 9th, which was this week, and I spoke with a couple of the people with Robinson, Palmer and Cox over the weekend, and they were quite complimentary of the finance department and how well things were put together and were looking for Caroline, as well as Franny. You've done a good job in putting things together for them. A lot different than it was last year, and of course, as we all know, we haven't even thought about the audit at this point. The departmental request, budget request for 2011 are due in the Finance Department's office by November the 20th, and that will give us a better idea as to what the next year looks like as far as requests. The Finance Department continues, and as well as the committee continues to monitor the current year budgets situation as far as the state cuts and the status of where we're at. And we'll, if need be, we'll certainly be coming back to this board and making recommendations or asking for changes in the expenditures process. Fran is also in the process of obtaining information from other jurisdictions regarding a purchasing card system. And Fran, I don't know whether you have heard much about it, but I can tell you through VACO and through NACO, there's a program where we can tag on to other counties much larger than we are, and will certainly benefit our purchasing power. We have to tap into that resource. There are counties in this state that are saving several $100,000 a year just by tagging on to something that a contract that, say, Fairfax County has in place. And the fact that it's so large, we're able to smaller counties to get a much better price. So we really need to follow through on that process, and I trust that's part of your information gathering. As far as schools are concerned, we have not met this month between the chairmen and the superintendent and the county administrator. However, good news that we have is the fact that we just received composite index information from the state, and it appears our composite index is going from 0.3817 to 3.580, so it's being reduced. I don't know what that's going to mean as far as dollars are concerned, but it certainly means a reduction in the county's cost and an increase as to what the state is going to provide. So that's good news for us for the coming year. And that's all I have from finance and education. Again, at the next meeting at the end of this month, we'll be in a much better shape to share with you what the condition of the county is, which I believe is it is an improvement of what we thought we were in early in the year. So pleased about that. All right, next item on the agenda is appointments. Recreation Advisory Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't confirmed the Mattapanai one yet.
You have not? Okay.
No, I have not.
Okay. The at-large member, we'll just come back with the name at the next board meeting. Okay. Building Code of Board of Appeals, Reed Church District.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I had talked with Bernard Pitts, better known to most of us as Randy.
Right.
And he has agreed to accept that again, and I would so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Rozelle, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we make a recommendation. That's one of those recommendations to the judge. Is that correct?
All right.
Right. That Mr. Randy Pitts be appointed to the Building Code Board of Appeals, Reed Church District. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Consent agenda. Is there an item on the consent agenda that any board member wishes to pull off?
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I need to pull C.
C? Okay. Anything else? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of C?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Popovich, seconded by Mr. Rozell. Discussion on the motion. All in favor vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Mr. Thomas, C.
Mr. Chairman, it would appear that the actual copy of the lease agreement that I have in my packet is the same lease agreement that we originally had. Unless I just have the wrong one, but I have the electronic copy, and Section 7, which is property maintenance, utilities, and other costs,
Right.
is exactly the same as it was before.
That's a mistake, Mr. Thomas. We did change it and apparently just put the wrong version in the packet. I apologize for that. We were going to change the, make sure I had it right here. The county was going to provide the internet and provide custodial services. Those were the two changes.
Right,
Yes. Yeah. We'll make sure that we correct that. We did correct it, and somehow the wrong version is in the packet. But we were aware of that.
Okay. Well, I think we won't affect anything the museum committee plans to do, but I guess we better see the right one before we approve it.
All right. We'll put C back on the agenda for the next board meeting, which is November the 24th, I believe.
That's correct.
All right. So we'll hold off until we get a clean copy.
They know it.
All right. Mr. Fincham, can you review the Chapter 7, 9, and 10 of the draft 2030 comprehensive plan?
Yes, sir.
Board members have any problem with that?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd like to briefly go over with you the last 3 chapters of the draft 2030 comprehensive plan. The first chapter for discussion tonight is Chapter 7, which is community facilities. We've significantly updated this chapter since it was first included in the 1994 plan. Community facilities chapter analyzes all of the services that the county in some way supports, either directly or indirectly through your budget or funding provided to other agencies such as the volunteer fire and rescue organizations, court services, et cetera, et cetera. The plan basically organizes these facilities by 3 sections: general government, public safety, and community services. General government includes all the facilities that actually operate under the auspices of the county administrator, including the department heads within Caroline County, such as public works, utilities, parks and recreation, economic development. We also included the constitutional officers because of their inclusion in the new county administration building here in Bowling Green. Public safety was broken out specifically to cover all of the safety-related organizations and services: Sheriff's Office, Fire and Rescue, Court Services, and the Magistrate's Office. And finally, the Community Services category includes all of the other outside agencies or agencies located here at the Community Services Center, including Social Service, Health Department, RAAA, as well as Extension. The plan includes an evaluation of standards for all these facilities that are found in various documents in the Commonwealth, existing conditions, and projects future needs based upon population estimates and future development. For the first time, we've actually included an inventory of all government buildings and facilities in our comprehensive plan. The board has authorized a number of studies over the years. There was a school facility study back in the late 90s. The county also did a facility study at that time. More recently, we did a park master plan. So we've taken all these various documents, sent out informational requests to all the department heads and agencies, and came up with this one large facilities assessment for all of the facilities in Caroline County. And finally, we went out and, as part of our efforts to improve the graphics, prepared photographic documentation of all the facilities in the county and actually included those as part of the comprehensive plan. So that people reading the plan, the general public, could see these facilities, tie them to the facility assessment, and see where these facilities are in the county. If you remember, we did Chapter 8 at the last meeting, which was the land use chapter. Chapter 9 is our transportation plan, and again, this chapter has also been fairly extensively modified from the previous plan, including an update of a lot of background material and graphics. The chapter begins with an overview of the current transportation system in the county. We look at all of the various modes of transportation and facilities that are currently available to the county. We highlight FRED service, the regional bus service that's available to the county, provide a map of the routes as well as a schedule of those bus routes and their connections to Fredericksburg and to other routes. We also discussed the functional classification system, which is the VDOT hierarchy for the classification of roads in the county. That classification ranges from local streets, which provide access to properties in the county, up to major collectors, which are your roads that connect larger settlement areas such as Bowling Green to Fredericksburg, and on up to the primaries and interstates, which provide intercity or interstate access. New to the chapter this go-round is a fairly extensive discussion of bike and recreational facilities in the county, pedestrian facilities. The county, in conjunction with George Washington Regional Commission and the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Association, worked to develop a regional transportation plan in which we looked at all of the transportation improvements that were needed in the George Washington region, including Caroline County, through the year 2035. Many of those maps and improvements that are specific to Caroline County have been modified from that plan and actually included in our transportation plan, together with cost estimates for those improvements. Finally, the goals, objectives, and action strategies have been updated to reflect the changes and additions to the transportation chapter. The last chapter, and probably the most brief of all the chapters, is the implementation chapter. Again, this chapter contains a summary of all the goals, objectives, and action strategies that are contained in all the other chapters. In this chapter, we've updated this by adding a new matrix which discusses the goals, objectives, and those implementation measures, and identifies what kind of action or recommendation that is, whether it's an action item, a capital item that requires funding, whether it requires an ordinance amendment, or whether it's some type of policy action that's required by the county. We've also established some time frames so that we can go back in and see how we are progressing in terms of meeting the various goals and strategies in the plan. And we've broken that down to short, medium, and long-term or ongoing. Some things we'll constantly be doing over the life of the plan. Others have maybe a 5 or 10 year time frame that we've identified for that work to be done. So that will actually give us an opportunity to measure how we do, how we perform in meeting our obligations. With that, that's my summary. I'll open it up and ask the board if you have any questions on any of those chapters.
Any questions, Mr. Fincham? All right, Mr. Fincham, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, We'd also like to go ahead and advertise this document for public hearing at the December 8th to solicit any public comment if the board would allow us to do that.
Let me ask a question.
I'm sorry, I understood you might be changing the date, so December 8th may not be.
Yeah, we're probably going to change the date to
Okay.
The 1st. But my question has to do with the sub-area planning that's being worked on now for the Fort Rural area. I don't want, because I know there's been some controversy, there have been some issues about that and questions about that. Just we need to make sure that this document that we're having a public hearing on does not include anything as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned with that particular sub-area plan.
Yes, sir, that's correct. That's a separate planning process.
We just need to make sure everybody understands that, because
Yes, sir.
if not, you may have a lot of discussion on this plan, thinking that it impacts the other plan. The other plan is going to be impacting this plan.
Yes, sir. And we've had some of those discussions
So
with
my
the
question is there anything wrong with delaying a public hearing on this plan until that plan has been finalized? What will we gain out of approving this plan? Because we have a comp plan in place right now.
Yes, sir.
So what problems would it create for the county if we delayed the approval and the public hearing on this plan until after the other plan has been completed?
I have not yet talked to Mr. Popowitz. His process is still at the sub-area planning committee and has not yet been referred to the planning commission.
I understand.
So we're probably some months away from perhaps that coming to the board. There is another opportunity, and I have mentioned to the board, we also have a follow-up process involving designation of urban development areas. And one possibility for the board to consider is to take Mr. Popowitz's Guinea-Cedon area plan and include that with the UDA process that we're going through as well. I don't have a definitive time frame for that coming through the commission and the board. So really it's a matter of, whether
that wasn't my question. My question was, what will the county lose if we delayed the public hearing and the implementation of this plan until after that has been finalized?
I don't know that you would lose anything other than timing. One of your goals in the current year was the completion of this plan update, and we have tried very hard to meet that time frame.
I understand, and I appreciate your efforts. I just don't want it to get intertwined in people's minds as to what's going on.
Mr. Chairman, could I add to that?
Sure, you can.
What Mr. Fincham has reviewed over the last few months has really been an inventory of what is in the county. The zoning, which includes the sub-area planning and other types of things, those are really separate. And they are continuing to be updated even when the comprehensive plan is, when these sections are not. These sections that he have covered is actually new material. I mean, we've never had a document like this before, and I guess one argument to moving forward with it is the information in this document changes almost monthly. And if we don't codify it at some point and begin to have a date that we can move forward, it does become at some point a process that we're going to have to continue to update and continue to have Mike back in front of us to review it again. I think it is important, and we can do a real good job of letting people know that there is no zoning that is being changed in this plan. All the sub-area plans that are in place today will continue to be in place.